Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're disappointed at Sri Lanka's withdrawal of support for Resolution 31. We made this clear in statements at the UNHRC in February, June and September 2020. We're working with international partners and have had discussions with Sri Lankan government on how to take this forward at the UNHRC in March. We're committed to the principles of the resolution, and our approach to Sri Lanka will be a priority for the UK at the HRC over the next few months.
Let's head over to Wilford with West Streeting. West Streeting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK's leadership on the issue of human rights in Sri Lanka, both historic and ongoing human rights abuses, has been critical. And we saw, whether through David Miliband as Foreign Secretary or David Cameron as Prime Minister, the importance of leadership at the very highest level. So what specifically will the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister be doing as leaders of the core group ahead of that crucial UN Human Rights Council in Geneva in March to make sure that the perpetrators of human rights abuses in Sri Lanka do not go unpunished, and we can look forward to a future based on truth, justice and reconciliation for all the peoples of Sri Lanka?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. As I pointed out in my response, we are absolutely committed to the principles of the resolution. My colleague, ministerial colleague Lord Ahmed, has discussed human rights and accountability with the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister and the High Commissioner in November and December respectively. We have spoken with Sri Lankan officials and with Geneva over the last week on these very issues.
We have Shadow Minister Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We on these benches believe that the government's foreign policy should be rooted in our country's commitment to human rights and the rule of law. Therefore, we deeply regret that in February 2020, the Sri Lankan government withdrew from its Human Rights Council obligations to promote reconciliation and accountability following the country's devastating civil war. More recently, the Sri Lankan government has introduced forced cremation for COVID-19 victims, a policy that has absolutely no basis in science and which rides roughshod over the traditional practices of Sri Lankan religious minorities, and which has rightly caused hurt and outrage amongst Muslim and Christian communities across the UK. So I ask the Minister, what steps has he taken to persuade the Sri Lankan government to end forced cremations? What work is he doing with international partners ahead of the next Human Rights Council session in March to ensure that the Sri Lankan government re-engages with the peace, reconciliation and accountability process? And what discussions has he had about human rights in the context of UK-Sri Lankan trade deal negotiations?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and he's right to raise it. We have shared guidance and scientific background with the government of Sri Lanka on how the UK has ensured that burials can continue to operate in a safe format within the WHO guidelines. We've also discussed via my colleague Lord Ahmed the importance of minority rights with the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister in November. Our High Commissioner to Sri Lanka has raised forced cremation several times with the Sri Lankans, most recently just over a week ago. We continue to speak with Sri Lanka and have done so within the last week, and with Geneva regarding their commitments to upholding this resolution. We're certainly committed to it. We will continue that dialogue.
We have a substantive question to the Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with your permission, I will answer questions 5 and 6 together. The resumption of Congress and the certification of Joe Biden's victory on the 7th of January sent an essential message that the democratic will of the US people cannot be challenged by a violent minority.